We're here at Arkadin Cinema on Gravois Avenue in beautiful South St. Louis in the Bevo Mill neighborhood for an evening of Worldwide Magazine. This is the first of two, and this one was held on March 10th, 2023.
This to write a feature for the Riverfront Times last year, and so I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction just to what we're going to see. But first, who first saw Worldwide Magazine on TV? All right, we got a little showing. How about on the internet? Okay, it's almost half and half. Who has never seen this before at all? All right, we got two newbies in the crowd. Welcome. So it is pretty difficult to explain Worldwide Magazine. It's pretty eclectic, but calling it St. Louis's Howard Stern show is kind of the closest I've gotten to a shorthand for it, especially because the host and mastermind of the show, Pep, or Pete E. Parisi, was a New Jerseyan who came to St. Louis through the radio industry. And so Pete worked as a DJ at KADI-FM in the early 80s with Radio Rich Dalton. And when he was off duty, he would be driving around the city, still listening to the radio, and if he heard something he didn't like, he would call Dalton up on like a payphone and like nag him about it. So we can look at like the technological history of Worldwide Magazine too, as like this is roughly the mid 80s to the late 90s, and PEP is like an early version of the dystopian thing that we call everything now of like a content creator, right? But this does represent some sort of democratization of like media, where like PEP is an amateur. He's purchased like one of the very first home consumer video cameras with cash that he earns driving a county cab. And the original premise of the show, in fact, is like you're going to go on this weird journey with Pep in his car, and like he's going to show you everything from his level behind the dash. So in a lot of ways, public access is like evolved into YouTube now. As recording and editing has gotten cheaper and the internet opens up a million more distribution channels. But in Pete's day, he had to shoot the footage, physically cut the film, edit it all together, and then hand deliver the reels to multiple public access stations across the greater St. Louis area if he wanted to see anything get on air. And he did that a lot. He did it for years, spent all his money on it, and our beautiful but hard-scrabbled city never really appreciated that artistic effort. No official St. Louis help ever came to keep Worldwide Magazine going, and Pete's death due to complications with diabetes, as well as some questionable personal circumstances, is a really tragic story. In the archive, we can see that Pete is also not always a really nice guy either. And while the show is really amazing and funny and real, there's a whole lot of rude behavior happening. Yeah. And it's nothing that like the Howard Stern show isn't guilty of either. So one thing you might take away tonight if you're watching, for instance, Pete lick a leather women's boot on camera is to notice the kind of freedom of expression that public access used to grant everyone. I think that the show's attitude is authentically working class, and it's gritty and irreverent. And by watching this material, we're getting a rare vibe from St. Louis that is otherwise undocumented in any of the traditional media. The Post-Dispatch and the network cable news do not pick up this insanely rare vibe. And the key word here is irreverence. Worldwide Magazine was primarily about giving the middle finger to all kinds of stuff and for saying shit you weren't supposed to say in polite St. Louis company. The show visited local sex shops and acknowledged the existence of hard drugs and depicted St. Louis in the 1980s the way it looked when you're standing on the street, which was pretty awful at times. The Kings Highway Viaduct was literally collapsing in on itself. The city was in full tilt decay from disinvestment, and the historic downtown buildings were turning into parking lots faster than anyone could document or question or object to, And that really pissed Pete off. And you can tell that there's a little bit of righteous anger in the show as well. Because the show loved St. Louis and it hated when no one would stand up for St. Louis. For example, when Pope John Paul II visited, many St. Louisans complained that His Holiness drove too fast for how many hours the crowd had gathered to see him. And Parisi's response to this was to express it in the show, where he played the Speed Racer theme over footage of the Pope Mobile hurtling down Tucker Avenue, and then cut in a clip of a Balkan soldier firing a semi-automatic rifle out of the window, lightly suggesting an assassination of the Holy Father. The irreverence for the sacred meant that Worldwide Magazine ended up doing some pretty progressive journalism as well. They regularly covered the Gay Pride Parade in the Central West End and the protests that broke out afterwards after the STLPD bludgeoned queer parade goers. They covered the Veiled Prophet Parade, my favorite subject, and the Worldwide Magazine cast heckled the VP, asking if he was trying to start a race war. Parisi and the crew covered Klan meetings, shot fundraising promos for the restoration of Tower Grove Park, did multiple episodes about the Great Flood of 1993, interviewed attendees for the Louis Farrakhan convention, and showed the comedian Fred Willard around when he visited. They also covered the boycotting of furniture store Schwab Angle, which civil rights advocates, activists of the African American community had accused of predatory lending. And all along the way, the show featured a huge cast of characters: singers, outsiders, pot smokers, dissidents, perverts, oddballs, artists, comedians, clowns. They all made up the extended Worldwide Magazine universe of authentically St. Louis people. It's hard to imagine it now, but that was sort of like a revolutionary act, I think. So Worldwide Magazine is very much a product of its time. It's an extremely valuable archive, which I'm unbelievably thankful to people like Jim Varagona, who has for many years tended the archive, digitized it, spent his own money on it, kept it safe so that we can all enjoy it tonight. And so I'm going to hand it off to Jim to say a little bit about what he's cut together for tonight. But thank you all for coming. Consider giving to help Jim keep the archive alive and keep digitizing it. And thank you all to the theater as well. Big round of applause.
Thank you, Devin. Thanks everyone for coming out. The turnout was overwhelming. All the reservations going out within like an hour and a half for the second show. By the way, if you have reservations for the second show, it's going to be the same thing. There might be a few other special guests. I won't go through how I got involved with all this. You can read Devin's article to get into the nitty-gritty of all of it. But like 3 years ago, about that, during when COVID was starting, I slightly know one of Linda's daughters, Linda being Pete's girlfriend when he passed away at that point in time. She contacted me at some point and said, hey, we have some boxes. Would you be interested? 8 boxes. And I said, sure, hey, please bring them on over. They were cleaning up her grandma's house. And Linda passed away about 9 or 10 years after Pete did. So I was working from home that day, COVID again, and I hear some rumblings on my porch, so I go out there and look, and this daughter of Linda's and someone else is helping her load boxes onto my porch, and I'm like, okay, 8 boxes. And I look down the road, and there's a pickup truck with a giant mound of boxes. So there were like 37 boxes in total. The masters of Worldwide Magazine. Probably the highest quality stuff we're going to see and the most complete collection of it. Granted, it's a little unorganized and it's a little moldy. So, along the way in the past 20 years, I've had Angelo here, who played Uncle Nunzio, he's stepped in.
How you doing?
He's helped the digitization process. I got to see his process up close the other day. He opens up the tapes, starts wiping the mold out with cotton swabs and alcohol. It's a very interesting process. And you have to make multiple passes of it to get a nice clean tape before you can stick it into something so you don't destroy it. So we are appreciative of that. The reason why I stay involved in this is, yeah, it's entertaining. The cast of characters, fantastic, funny, but it's a time capsule of St. Louis. It's like the home movies of St. Louis. It probably happens weekly, every other week, something like that, where someone will reach out to me, whether through Facebook or YouTube, and say, "That's my grandpa," or "That's my mom," and like they've long passed away, and you know, we've preserved something of their loved one. It's amazing. If you've watched one of the Dino's Bungalow videos, they did a few episodes at least at Dino's Bungalow. Where's it? Leona?
Yes. Leona Bates.
Yeah, and Bates. So anyway, the crowd there at the time was a little older, right? And they had a band, a house band, and Dino was part of it. But the older folks would get out there and dance. But some gal contacted me and said they just celebrated her mom's 100th birthday, and she's there dancing with her dad. It's pretty cool stuff, because these people like just come across this stuff one day and like latch on to it. So I live for that stuff. It keeps me going watching this. So what I put together tonight, little sampler, a lot of it, if you've been watching this stuff, you've probably seen I've sprinkled like best of stuff throughout, especially for the folks that haven't seen a lot. And then there's things that you might have not seen. One thing for the cast members, I stayed away from long clips, but I wanted to show things in their entirety too. So if you're looking for something longer, it probably didn't make the cut. But I tried to cover most of the cast members that you look for. So you're all in this somewhere, in some capacity. Yeah, so without further ado, where does he get play? Hit play, go ahead.
For Jim as well, our archivist. Would anyone like to say anything? And any comments on what we said?
At your house. What the hell's wrong with you people?
Tim Elvis.
Pete said I could be on the show, but I had to wear a mask, so.
You are on there without a mask.
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay, so my mom and my dad were the Hoosier Mooners. Video, which is my mom. Big Mike's Weekend, which is my dad here. He was Big Mike. We had a lot of fun making them. And I enjoyed Pete's company and Hung Way Low and everybody. But anyway, we were young. I was in my 20s. It was just a blast. We had a lot of drink your drink, smoke a little smoke, and we had a great time.
And redhead soup.
Yes, yes, my mom always cooked for us. So anyways, I'm Candy Buns. I'm Ruth's daughter. And from the Hoosier Mooners. So
be here tonight, but his balloon got shot down.
The China balloon got shot down over the Yukon.
So with us this evening, we have Big Mike of the Hoosier Mooners. Mickey. Candy introduced herself. We have Angelo, who played Uncle Nunzio and Hung Way Low. And we have Tim Kniest, who did a lot of music for the show, including a Trip of a Lifetime theme, right? Yeah, and he played Stinky. And was married to the great Miss Kathy.
Yes.
And we saw 10 Cents a Dance. Wonderful performance. So
Yes.
thank you all for being here.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
for
us.
doing
This
it.
was so
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for doing it.
Absolutely. Could we do a little bit of a Q&A? Does anybody have any questions for Cass or Jim? Anybody?
What's the deal with what are they called, the Warner Brothers? I didn't see any of them up there.
Yeah. I mean,
No, you got a lot of archives
Sure,
and files,
sure.
I get it, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like one of my favorite guys. So
Yeah.
what's their story? What's their deal?
So, yeah, you try to cover like 15 years of footage and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
no,
little
I get it.
yeah. I did have Tom in there for a little bit, but I took him out because I find some better stuff. But anyway, but yeah, actually, like my first interaction with the show, I mean, I watched the show before this, but I went to one of the picnics in '97 at Grondelet Park with a few buddies of mine, and I brought a video camera, and that was like my thing. I brought my video camera everywhere, and that's how I related to it. So, but Tom Horner was already pretty loaded. He was wearing, his face was painted white for some reason. He was wearing a pacifier around his neck, a cowboy hat, and he was talking like this. And my friends and I kind of latched onto him, and he's like, I just want to go to the bathroom. So we got him in one of those city, metal trash cans and rolled him down the hill a couple of times.
I think there's footage of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So then someone invited me to meet Pete, and I shook his hand. He had a syringe in his pocket, and I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I was like, yeah. He was a diabetic, and I got invited over to Pete's house, met Linda, met Pete. Pete had like a broken leg at the time. Is that right? Do you guys remember that? I remember him like getting wheeled around in a walker. Yeah, okay. So I feel like he was in just an undershirt and boxer shorts when I met him. Just in his apartment. We watched the footage. He talked with me and my friends. Really nice guy. Spent the time with us. Anyway, so the Tom Horner footage, I wasn't a religious watcher of the show. It was much like a lot of other people that I've talked to, like, well, you're flipping through the channels, you stumble upon it, I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna start watching this, It wasn't like you schedule to watch Worldwide Magazine, you just stumble upon it on a Friday, Saturday night. So a buddy of mine said, hey, Tom Horner said he went into the hospital because getting rolled down the hill in a barrel, and so that is in one of the clips that I've come across where he talks about that. Yeah, and then Tom died like a year later, I think, in a house fire.
He was sitting in his easy chair smoking.
Yes. Now I've
Through the floor, he wound up in the basement.
I posted the tribute episodes to him recently, and that's like, those two episodes kind of cover the emotions of the show pretty well, I think, because you have the comedy of it, you have the real life aspect of it, and you have these people that are connected to each other. Yeah, the tragedy, and then it's odd, but it's very real that Marty and Pete, and I'm trying to think of who else, Vince went to Tom's burnt out house and kept emphasizing, we've faked deaths before, but this is very real. and Tom passed away. And then Eugene, so there was Tom, Eugene, and Joe. Eugene, around like the early years of me having the Facebook page, would reach out to me and we would chat a lot. He was on hard times, and he passed away at some point in there. And I don't recall what happened to him. And then Joe, I think he went to grade school with my mother-in-law, and we had a night out going to see a band with my mother-in-law, and he showed up there, and he looks very different, but yeah, it's interesting coming across people later on after seeing them on the screen here. But yeah, a tragic story of the three brothers there. And you guys can speak to how you became involved with the show, but I know those guys, it's on film that they encountered Pete at the gas station at the Murdoch cutoff, and he's got video of talking to them, and they're like, "We're the Horner brothers, and we have the same dental plan," and they're all missing teeth. So, and I think that's like the way a lot of people got involved with the show. They kind of just latched on to Pete and sought him out and got onto the show, and he attracted the odd, you know.
When I met Pete, he was working for Channel 11, and it was a public access channel, 15, that we did the shows on. I was in my mid-20s, and we just had a lot of fun. And my dad and my mom, we were the Hoosier Mooners, but they did shows with them also. And I just want to thank you, because looking back at this footage, it's amazing. I mean, all the stuff from South St. Louis, like Grand Negro, I mean, that's where I grew up, you know, and it's just really great. I'm really glad you're doing that.
Yeah.
It's really awesome. So much has changed over the last 20, 30 years, whatever, and it's just great. I mean, we lost Pete, what, 2002?
Yep.
So it's really awesome you're doing it, Jim, and I appreciate it.
Well, I have Angelo's help as well, and I have to give credit to him for helping through the years.
Yeah.
He's kind of researched and figured out how to clean up these tapes from the help of the internet, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were talking a little bit the other day about why 20 years later we're still doing this, and I
I mean, it's iconic. It's
yeah.
iconic footage.
Well, and then like once you get involved, you kind of got to see it through to the end too. There's still tapes to digitize, clean up, discover. I don't know everything that I have in my basement. I mean, it's labeled, but some of it that's labeled isn't even what's on the tape. So there's surprises in there. And even though there's like multiple copies of one thing, Pete would make different cuts as well throughout the years, add things, take things away.
He used to take the 1 hour shows, and he'd take 2 shows and break it down to one, because he had to make it fit the hour.
Yep.
So you edited longer
Yeah.
than you should have. So when he edited them down 2 shows into one, it made them really good, you know.
Yeah. One thing I wanted you to talk about, Big Mike, and Angelo, you as well. Tim, I don't know if you were present for it, but sitting with Pete when he would edit. One thing that sticks out for me is the soundtrack. And just imagining sitting there, he's cutting that in his living room, grabbing records.
Yeah.
So that was all just part of his collection.
He had so many records, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. And he would find the right songs for the moment.
He would immediately know what music to use.
Right.
And he'd have two 3/4-inch decks.
Yeah.
He'd be flying, going through it.
Yeah.
And if there was a frame off, he would stop everything, cut it. He wouldn't He's like a perfectionist.
Yeah. And for folks to understand, so the 3/4 inch tapes, that's a lot of like what's in the archive that hasn't been touched necessarily. Those are like larger broadcast style tapes, and Pete had several decks of those. They're all in my possession now. They're not really functioning, but it's nice to plug them in and see the lights and everything. But
oftentimes Pete would need original music, and that's when
that's where Tim came in.
like downtown Maplewood is everything.
Oh yeah. another classic one. Yeah.
Most of the songs, Pete actually wrote most of the songs. And then I just went back. I had a little 4-track recorder. If anybody's a musician, we all had 4-track recorders in the day. And I'd go back and just, play around and come up with some stuff. And usually it turned out all right.
Sex, I want sex.
Yes.
That was definitely Pete.
Yeah, there's a show called Sex, which I cannot find anywhere.
I have the 3/4 inch tape of it. I have it in a stack to send off.
Which I think is one of the best overall shows that we ever did. And has anybody ever seen the movie Tom Jones from the early 60s?
Yes, of course.
There's a great scene in there. It's a period piece
Where they're eating?
where they're eating, and Tom Jones has saved this lady, this damsel in distress. So they go back to the tavern and they're eating, and it's 2 shots, 2 close-ups that are cut back and forth of the man eating and then the woman eating, and they're
Eating lustily.
pardon me? Oh, yes, lustily, to say the least. But it was a great scene. Well, we redid that scene with Mickey, and Emmett McAuliffe played the guy. Emmett was briefly in the where we were getting thrown out of the Adams Mark.
He was in the Fred Willard footage.
Yes.
The guy at the urinal. Yeah.
And he had his suit on. He's a lawyer. But anyway.
Emmett said he'll try to make it in the last moments of this, but
But
we'll see.
anyway, we recreated that scene, and it was just great. We shot it at Mickey's restaurant. She used to own Mangia Italiano with her husband at the time. That was almost like our clubhouse.
Yeah.
We used to go there all the time. And anyway, if you ever get a chance to get sex out of the
Right, look for that show.
yeah, if you ever get sex,
It's at the top of the stack in the archive.
it's a good show, and I hope we can get that out someday.
Yeah.
Dr. Biff Cosgrove.
Oh, there's so many good things in that. And,
Making love to an office desk.
yeah. And Miss Kathy, we went to a hardware store, and she had a white lab coat on, and she played.
Antifreeze.
She played this sex therapist known as Paulina Spankoff. She had a great Eastern European accent that she used that was so funny. And she'd walk around and she'd show you pliers, and she was like, now these are for, well, you know what they're for. Anyway, if we could get that show out, that would be terrific. But that's what Kathy and I were fans. We saw Pete's show. It was actually shown here where he's dancing in the street, Get Off My Street. That was the first.
Do you know what street that was?
Yeah,
Tom?
it's 18th Street at Shoto.
18 and Shoto. I thought it was Shoto.
And I said to Kat, you got to come in here and see this. So we sat there and watched Pete dancing, in the street, Get Off My Street, and we just loved it.
It's a character.
And he had a thing downtown at the Sarah Sculpture, which I guess is still there.
Yeah.
And it was very controversial at the time. Everybody, I won't say everybody, but many people hated it. and saw it as an eyesore. So Pete had, of course, went down and we had a big gathering there. And that's where we met Pete, and then we just kind of latched on. Kathy was pretty much the producer of the show with Pete for a number of years. She just, any weird thing that Pete wanted, any costume, any kind of thing like that, Kathy would go out and get it. She'd fix people's hair the way that Pete wanted it or whatever. And I really appreciate, Jim, that you put that clip of Kathy singing 10 cents a day.
Now,
Yes.
did she have any kind of like drama background?
Just being married to me. As you can imagine,
Of course,
being
yeah.
stinky.
Yeah.
No, she was just a very outgoing person, but had a great sense. I guess
She's
one
a
of the
beautiful
things that she
person.
really helped Pete on was visualizing some of the stuff that he wanted to do on the show. And as Jim mentioned, Pete had this great brain for music. And I'll be indebted to him forever for the music that he turned me on to.
Right.
Music that I kind of heard when I was a kid, but kind of tossed it aside.
Fletcher Henderson,
Fletcher Henderson.
Mills Brothers.
Yeah, all that old jazz and stuff. And he liked it because Pete said when he used to watch the old cartoons when he was a kid, Betty Boop and all those, they had that kind of jazz music because that was the current contemporary music at the time. That was the soundtrack for a lot of those cartoons. And he knew it worked well with comedy. And he was just brilliant at being able to pull up songs and
So much fun.
you know, use it within a short context or a long form. So, but that's how we got on the show and got to meet him, was we were fans and thought he was crazy.
You were right.
And he was.
The first time I ever heard Pete was when he was a disc jockey at KADI. He was kind of he was in the evenings, late evenings.
And he'd use that nasally,
This is B-E-B.
Yeah.
And he was a great disc jockey, as you can imagine. And funny to listen to in between the songs when you used to have disc jockeys who could talk to people, you know, instead of everything being so monetized now. And, you know, everything's so structured. And that's, you know, watching those clips, I don't know if you could do that kind of show anymore.
It killed
No,
you.
you
You
can't.
know, I don't.
No.
I don't-
Oh, God,
people are
no.
so-
oh my God.
People are so-
That would not
Trouble. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
Yeah.
they're whatever they are.
Yeah.
They're, in a way, people are too sophisticated with media and stuff now.
Yeah.
And, you know, where we would go walk around taping this stuff, we'd have a camera and we'd have a separate deck that somebody else would be carrying. And nowadays, of course,
They had the cord.
you don't need any of that. But
Yeah.
anyway, I don't want to go on forever.
No,
I could, but I won't. Anyway, that's how we got involved, and we loved it. It was great. Meet these people. These are some of the greatest people I ever met in my life. Just wonderful, wonderful
Really good
people.
memories, a lot of fun.
I want to tell you about when me and Pete were on KXOK on radio for about a year and a half or something. And we used to play radio shows like the Whisper and all these old time radio shows. And when the show was playing, we'd go out on the porch and get high. And then we'd come back in. Well, then the radio show was over. We went back to doing our shtick, and we got out there. Some lady called us up, and she goes, "Are you guys high?" We had a lot of fun there.
Just a little bit.
Pete used to do a radio show for KDHX for a while. It was old jazz music, and it was on, I think, Sundays. Or it was
Right
on
before
Friday
class.
nights, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it was. We did a show, and we did a show where we recorded it at his place, put the music in, and then Kathy and I just did goofy voices and stuff, and played the German music, and, you know, did a German accent, you know, just idiotic
It
stuff.
was
But
so beautiful.
it got to the point where there was a guy who was there, and I don't know whether, he was at the station playing the recorded show, and he got so mad at what we were doing, he said, I refuse to play this anymore, and he turned the show off. Well, Pete called, I don't know, Mr. Double Helix, whoever he was, or Mrs., I don't know, and said, the guy turned our show, and the guy came back and said, well, they called me, they told me I had to turn this show back on, but I don't. So he did. And about 10 minutes, I can't stand this show, I'm turning it off. And he turned the show off again. So Pete he just was a crazy man. He just drew, it was like a lightning rod. He would draw all that attention.
Ahead of his time, I think.
But he was very, very talented man. Probably one of the funniest people I've ever known.
Yeah.
And clever and knew what he wanted to do, even though it doesn't look like it. So that on the screen, he really did know what he was doing and what he wanted.
Kind of raw video. I mean, he just went for it.
It was great.
Yeah.
Just showing up
A lot of
places
fun.
and doing silly shtick in front of wherever.
We did a live show one time, and the Ayatollah in Iran had just died. And I don't know if anybody remembers this, but they were carried, and he fell off the and they all started hitting him. So I got a door. I had an old door, and I brought it down there. I brought a bunch of towels, and everybody put towels around it. And then we carried out Mike Cosgrove.
He was the
He was
Ayatollah.
dressed as the Ayatollah. And we brought him out, and we got him. And then he got up, and he was like, "Oi, oi!" He started talking with a Jewish accent.
And that was on the live show, right?
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah,
live show.
yeah.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah, that was brutal. Pete come out, he had no idea what we were doing. That was great.
Well, I think, are we about ready? I think everybody's going to stick around if we want to ask some more questions, have a drink at the bar. Be sure to tip the bartender very well.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you all for coming. This has been absolutely amazing. Thank you,
We do have some
Postcards?
some postcards that the cast can autograph. I have a T-shirt from when the Giant Assassin ran for alderman. If anyone's interested in that, I don't know what size it is. I'll have to check, but yeah. And we have some other randomness, just like the show was. So yeah, some dog shitting coins. So yeah. Anyone have any questions?
What happened to Miss Vanessa?
Oh, the songbird?
Yeah.
The songbird.
No.
So, if you've been a member of the page for a while, I came into contact with her, it's probably been over 10 years ago. She's exactly like she was on the show. And I talked to her for like 2 separate times, like an hour apiece, just talking about her experiences with Pete. She was upset about how she was portrayed on the show with like the childish music and stuff. So she asked me not to publish any of the episodes that she was in.
Oh.
I think I obliged for a little bit.
I like her.
But given that it's just her singing, at some point I was like, I'm just going to put it out there. And
She never appreciated all the publicity Pete got for her.
Yeah.
Never appreciated it a little bit.
So, and I never heard from her after that. I had her email address, I had her phone number. She never called me or emailed after that. But yeah, sounded the same, still in the area as far as I know. Yeah. She did move to St. Louis City for a little bit, but
Pretty big lead.
she was trying to, she was trying to make some connections to get her music going for a while there. So.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. So we'll break out the postcards. You guys pick which one you want. We'll all sign it.
trip of a lifetime. Oh, it's the trip of a lifetime. It's gonna be a real nice time. It's the trip of a lifetime. It's the trip of a lifetime. It's the trip of a lifetime.